The city lights blurred as Anna Montgomery rushed down the sidewalk, gripping her phone in one hand, while struggling to keep her bag from slipping off her shoulder. She had exactly 10 minutes to make it to her interview, and as usual, traffic had worked against her. She tapped frantically on her Uber app, searching for her ride, but the little car icon was stuck 3 blocks away. Her heart pounded. This was her one shot. Flora Chen, Sinclair Enterprises' head of HR, wasn't known for giving second chances. If Anna was late, she could kiss this opportunity goodbye. Then, like a beacon of hope, a sleek black Audi pulled up to the curb in front of her. She barely glanced at the tinted windows before throwing open the door and sliding inside. Finally, she muttered breathlessly, shoving her phone into her bag. "Market Street, please. And if you could—" She stopped mid-sentence, eyes widening as she took in the man sitting in the driver's seat. He was not wearing an Uber uniform. In fact, he wasn't even in the driver's seat. A sharp-dressed man in a tailored navy suit sat comfortably, his piercing blue eyes locked on her with a mixture of amusement and confusion. One hand rested casually on the leather armrest, while the other held a phone, which he now set down with deliberate ease. "Miss," he said, his voice smooth and deep, "I think you've mistaken this for your ride." Anna's stomach dropped. Oh no. Her fingers gripped the strap of her bag as her brain short-circuited. How had she not noticed? The luxury interior, the silent, imposing aura of the man staring at her, the lack of an actual driver. All signs she had most definitely just made a huge mistake. She stammered, her face heating up. "Oh my God, I thought this was my Uber." The man lifted a brow, clearly amused. "Do I look like an Uber driver to you?" She swallowed hard. No, of course not. She scrambled to get out, fingers fumbling with the door handle. But before she could bolt, the actual driver opened the door from the outside, blinking at her in surprise. "Sir?" the driver asked, glancing between the two of them. The man, whoever he was, smirked, tilting his head slightly toward Anna. Well, this is a first. Anna wanted the ground to swallow her whole. "I am so sorry," she blurted out. This is the most embarrassing thing I've ever done. I swear I wasn't trying to carjack you or anything." He chuckled, the sound low and rich. "Good to know." She darted out of the car, mortified, barely processing his presence as she dashed toward the actual Uber that had just pulled up behind him. As she climbed in, she stole one last glance at the mystery man, only to find him watching her through the window, a knowing smirk playing at his lips. She had no idea that in just a few minutes, she'd be seeing him again. Anna barely had time to catch her breath as the Uber pulled away from the curb, her heart still pounding from the embarrassing mistake. She squeezed her eyes shut for a second, inhaling deeply to steady herself. "Focus, Anna. This interview is what matters. Not some ridiculously handsome stranger in a suit." The car weaved through traffic, but her mind was still trapped in the awkward encounter. The way the man had looked at her, amused, intrigued, completely unfazed, lingered in her thoughts. There was something undeniably commanding about him, as if he was used to people stepping into his space and immediately knowing who he was. And that smirk? Infuriating. Who even smirks like that in real life? She shook her head, snapping herself out of it as the Uber came to a smooth stop in front of Sinclair Enterprises. The towering glass building gleamed under the morning sun, an intimidating beacon of corporate success. Anna didn't hesitate. This was her moment. Grabbing her bag, she rushed inside, heading straight for the 26th floor, where the interview was set to take place. Her heels clicked against the marble flooring as she stepped into the high-end office space. The receptionist barely glanced up before motioning her toward the waiting area. Anna smoothed down her blouse, inhaling another calming breath. "It's fine. You can do this." "Miss Montgomery?" She shot up from her seat, forcing a professional smile as she turned, only to freeze completely. Standing just a few feet away, with that same knowing smirk, was the man from the car. Her stomach plummeted. Number, this was not happening. Her lips parted slightly, her mind scrambling for a logical explanation, but the words refused to form. "Ah," he said smoothly, slipping his hands into his pockets as he observed her reaction. "We meet again." Anna's heart pounded against her ribs. No, she couldn't breathe. What was he doing here? Unless… Oh no. It hit her like a freight train. Sinclair Enterprises. James Sinclair. The CEO. Her breath hitched. She had stormed into this man's car, snapped at him like he was a low-level Uber driver. And now she was standing in his company, about to be interviewed for a job. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a disaster. James tilted his head slightly, watching the emotions flicker across her face. He looked positively entertained. "Miss Montgomery," a crisp voice cut through her panic. She tore her gaze away from him to find Flora Chen, Sinclair Enterprises' HR director, eyeing her with thinly veiled impatience. "You're late." Anna's throat went dry. I got here as fast as I could," she managed, desperately trying to compose herself. Flora's expression remained unreadable. "Follow me." Anna's feet felt like lead as she walked past James, the heat of his gaze burning into her back the entire way. As she stepped into the glass-walled conference room, her mind raced. This was bad. So bad. And somehow, she had the distinct feeling that James Sinclair wasn't going to let her forget it anytime soon. The tension in the conference room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Anna sat stiffly in the plush leather chair, her hands folded in her lap, doing her best to ignore the fact that James Sinclair, the man she had mistaken for an Uber driver, was now seated at the head of the long glass table. She could feel his gaze on her, unreadable, assessing. He had yet to say a word since Flora had started the interview, which somehow made the entire situation even worse. Flora, on the other hand, was as sharp and no-nonsense as Anna had expected. She flipped through Anna's resume with a scrutinizing expression before finally glancing up. "So, Miss Montgomery," she said coolly, "tell me why you think you'd be a good fit for Sinclair Enterprises." Anna took a steadying breath, forcing herself to focus. "I believe my background in interior design, along with my experience working on independent projects, has given me a strong eye for creating spaces that are both functional and aesthetically compelling. I understand how to bring a client's vision to life while balancing practicality and innovation." Flora raised a skeptical brow. "You don't have any experience working with a firm, though. Just freelance work." Anna fought the urge to shift in her seat. "That's true. But I believe that my ability to manage projects independently, handling everything from conceptualization to execution, has given me a well-rounded perspective." Flora didn't look impressed. James finally spoke. "Handling everything?" His voice was smooth, controlled. "That's a bold statement." Anna's breath caught. His tone wasn't outright dismissive, but it carried an undeniable edge of challenge. She met his gaze, pulse racing, determined not to back down. "Yes," she said firmly. I've worked directly with clients, developed designs from scratch, and even coordinated with contractors to ensure proper execution. I know how to handle pressure and problem solve on the spot. Something flickered in James's eyes. Interest, maybe, before he leaned back in his chair, considering her. Flora, however, was far less amused. A corporate setting is very different from working independently. Do you think you'll be able to adapt? Anna refused to let doubt creep in. I know I can. The air in the room shifted slightly, and for a moment, it almost seemed as if Flora was about to dismiss her entirely. But then James spoke again, his voice even but decisive. I want to see what she can do. Flora's head snapped toward him, her lips pressing into a tight line. James, this isn't... You said it yourself, he interrupted smoothly, his gaze still on Anna. She doesn't have firm experience, but that doesn't mean she doesn't have potential. Anna's heart pounded. He wasn't dismissing her. He was giving her a chance. Flora's lips pressed into a thin line, clearly unhappy with James's decision. She exhaled sharply, setting Anna's resume down on the table with deliberate precision. You want to see what she can do? She repeated, her tone making it clear that she found the idea borderline ridiculous. James didn't react. He simply tilted his head slightly, eyes still locked on Anna as if waiting for her to flinch, to fold, to second-guess herself. She didn't. If you don't think I can handle it, then let me prove you wrong, Anna said, her voice steadier than she felt inside. A flicker of something crossed James's face. Amusement, interest, challenge, before he finally leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. Then you'll have your chance. Flora inhaled sharply, clearly holding back a retort. What exactly do you propose? James turned his attention to Flora, his expression unreadable. The Sinclair Enterprises VIP lounge is in desperate need of a redesign. Flora stiffened. That's an internal project, James. We typically assign those to our in-house designers. Then consider this an exception, James said smoothly. Miss Montgomery will submit a proposal. If it meets our standards, we'll discuss next steps. If not, he glanced at Anna, then we'll know she wasn't the right fit. It was a test, a clear-cut challenge, placed before her like a gamble. Anna swallowed. The VIP lounge? That was no small project. It was an exclusive space used by high-profile clients and executives. If she pulled this off, it would be a huge boost to her credibility. But if she failed? She didn't have the luxury of failure. Flora still didn't look pleased, but she relented. Fine, she said crisply, turning back to Anna. You'll have 1 week to submit a full proposal, including conceptual sketches, mood boards, and a projected timeline. If it's not up to standard, don't expect any second chances. Anna nodded, pulse racing. Understood. James watched her closely for another second before standing. Then we're done here. He buttoned his suit jacket with effortless ease, as if this entire encounter had been nothing more than an afterthought. Anna, however, was still grappling with what had just happened. She had walked into this room expecting an interview. She was leaving with an opportunity. As she rose from her seat, she felt James's gaze on her again, assessing, measuring. Don't disappoint me, Miss Montgomery, he said simply, then turned and walked out. Anna exhaled, tension coiling in her spine. She had 1 week. 1 week to prove she deserved this. As she exited the conference room, Chloe's words echoed in her mind. Be careful, Anna. Men like him, they don't give opportunities without expecting something in return. She didn't know if that was true, but she was about to find out. The next few days blurred together in a whirlwind of research, sketching, and caffeine-fueled brainstorming sessions. Anna spent every waking hour poring over designs, pulling inspiration from luxury interiors, balancing bold innovation with the sleek professionalism that a company like Sinclair Enterprises demanded. But despite her relentless focus, she couldn't shake one problem: James Sinclair. He was a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. The way he had watched her in that interview, not dismissive, not amused, but something else, something calculating. And then there was the fact that she was now designing a space for his company, under his direct approval. The same man whose car she had practically hijacked just days ago. She groaned, rubbing her temples. "Focus, Anna. He doesn't matter. The project does." At least that was what she told herself. But she knew the moment she presented her design, she would have to face him again. And she wasn't sure if she was ready for that. The sound of a pencil scratching against paper filled Anna's tiny apartment as she hunched over her drafting table, surrounded by an explosion of fabric swatches, digital renderings, and color samples. She had been working non-stop for the past 4 days, balancing between exhaustion and an almost manic determination to make this project perfect. She had to get this right. Sinclair Enterprises wasn't just another corporate firm. It was one of the biggest names in luxury business spaces. If she could impress James Sinclair with her design, it could open doors she had only dreamed of. But that was easier said than done, because James Sinclair was impossible to read. He hadn't spoken to her since the interview, but she knew he was watching. Flora had sent an email confirming the date of her proposal presentation, and Anna had no doubt that James himself had dictated the deadline, and she would be ready. Or at least, she was trying to be. Anna ran a hand through her hair, staring at the 3 variations of her concept. Each one was bold in its own way. The first played with sleek minimalism, balancing dark wood and brushed steel. The second introduced warm, rich textures, creating a space that was both powerful and inviting. The third, her personal favorite, was a seamless blend of both, sophisticated but daring, sharp yet undeniably welcoming. She tapped her pen against the table, biting her lip. Which one would James choose? More importantly, which one would impress him the most? A knock at the door snapped her out of her thoughts. "Ugh, Chloe, please tell me you brought coffee," she called, already dragging herself toward the door. But when she swung it open, it wasn't Chloe standing there. It was Ryan Carter. Dressed in a perfectly fitted blazer and an infuriatingly confident smirk, James's best friend and business partner leaned against the doorframe, a to-go coffee in one hand and a manila folder in the other. Anna blinked. "What are you doing here?" Ryan lifted the coffee. "You asked for caffeine." She folded her arms, unimpressed. "I asked Chloe for caffeine." "Well, that's disappointing. I thought you'd be more excited to see me." He handed her the coffee anyway. Anna took it begrudgingly, eyeing him. "And what's in the folder?" Ryan grinned, stepping inside without an invitation. "Oh, just something James wanted you to have." Anna's stomach twisted. She shut the door and turned to face him, arms still crossed. "And what exactly would that be?" Ryan set the folder on her cluttered table, tapping it lightly. "A list of restrictions for your design. Some non-negotiables according to the great James Sinclair." Anna groaned. "You've got to be kidding me." "Oh, I never kid when it comes to my best friend's impossible standards," Ryan said cheerfully. "You're learning that now." Anna didn't know whether to scream or throw the coffee at him. Anna snatched up the folder and flipped it open, her eyes scanning the neatly typed list of restrictions that James had apparently deemed non-negotiable. Her irritation grew with every line. No bold color schemes. No unnecessary artistic embellishments. Minimal use of texture contrast. Strict adherence to Sinclair Enterprises' signature design aesthetic. Final layout must be approved before any execution begins. Anna let out a frustrated sigh and looked up at Ryan. So basically, he wants something cold, corporate, and completely devoid of personality? Ryan grinned, clearly enjoying her reaction. I mean, I wouldn't phrase it like that. But yes. Anna tossed the folder onto the table, crossing her arms. What's the point of hiring a designer if he just wants a carbon copy of what he already has? Ryan shrugged, still maddeningly amused. Because James likes control, and he doesn't take well to surprises. Anna scoffed. Well, he's in for one. Ryan raised a brow. You planning to ignore his rules? She thought about it. A safe approach might get her through the door, but would it make her stand out? Would it make James see her as more than just another designer? Number Anna took a long sip of coffee, gaze flicking back to her designs. I'm planning to give him exactly what he doesn't know he needs, she said finally. Ryan laughed. Oh, I like you. She rolled her eyes. Great. Now leave so I can actually get some work done. Ryan held up his hands in surrender and headed for the door. Can't wait to see how this turns out. Anna spent the next 3 days refining her proposal, fine-tuning every detail, pushing the boundaries just enough to challenge Sinclair's rigid guidelines without outright defying them. The morning of the presentation, she stood outside Sinclair Enterprises' glass-walled conference room, heart hammering. Inside, James sat at the head of the table, completely unreadable, his gaze flicking briefly to her before returning to his laptop. Flora stood beside him, arms crossed, looking like she was already prepared to reject whatever Anna had prepared. And then there was Jacob Foster, seated casually at the far end of the room, watching the proceedings with a smirk that sent alarm bells ringing in her head. What the hell was he doing here? She didn't have time to figure it out. The moment the doors closed behind her, Flora gestured for her to begin. Anna swallowed, steadying herself. This was it. She clicked the remote and her designs appeared on the large screen behind her. For a brief second, silence filled the room. Then James's gaze sharpened. This, he said slowly, eyes locked onto her, is not what I asked for. Anna met his stare head-on. No, she said. It's better. A slow, dangerous smile curled at the edge of James's lips. Convince me. Anna stood tall, shoulders squared, as James's words hung in the air. Convince me. She had been expecting resistance, anticipating it, but hearing the challenge in his voice, seeing the way his piercing blue eyes dared her to justify her work, sent a shiver down her spine. She clicked the remote, advancing the slide to reveal her concept breakdown. Your original request emphasized minimalism, neutrality, and adherence to the Sinclair Enterprises' existing design aesthetic. She began, her voice steady. But I believe that approach misses the core purpose of this lounge. James leaned back in his chair, watching her intently. Anna continued, shifting her weight slightly. This space isn't just a waiting area, it's a statement. Every executive, every potential investor who steps through these doors should feel power, exclusivity, and prestige. A cold, lifeless space won't inspire confidence. It won't make them stay. She advanced the slide again, displaying a sleek, bold reinterpretation of the Sinclair aesthetic. It maintained the sophistication and refinement that Sinclair Enterprises was known for, but with a richer depth, deep wood tones, understated luxury in the textures, subtle gold accents that didn't overpower but enhanced the experience. James's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Flora, however, was far less subtle in her reaction. She exhaled sharply, arms still crossed. "This is a drastic departure from what was asked." Anna didn't flinch. "It's an improvement." A quiet chuckle came from the far end of the table. Jacob Foster. "Well, well," he mused, tapping his fingers against the table. "Looks like we have someone who isn't afraid to challenge Sinclair himself. That's refreshing." Anna's jaw tightened at his tone. There was something about him that felt off. James ignored Jacob entirely, his focus still on Anna. "You took liberties with the brief." "I saw an opportunity to make it better," she countered. A pause. Then, instead of reprimanding her, James simply said, "Walk me through it." Anna's pulse raced. He wasn't dismissing it outright. He was listening. She took a steadying breath and dove into the details, explaining the intentional choices behind each element, how every texture and material had been selected to create a subconscious sense of influence and status. She was completely in her element, her passion threading through every word. And James was watching her, like he was seeing something he hadn't expected. As Anna continued her presentation, she could feel the energy in the room shift. The initial skepticism from Flora and the unreadable intensity from James had morphed into something else, something closer to intrigue. She advanced another slide, revealing a 3D rendering of the proposed space, a seamless blend of modern power and timeless elegance. The lounge exuded authority, sophistication, and an understated grandeur that felt distinctly Sinclair Enterprises, but with a vision that went beyond the safe, expected aesthetic. She turned toward James. "The current design philosophy you follow works. It's sleek, professional, efficient, but it lacks warmth, personality. Clients and executives shouldn't just see Sinclair Enterprises as a place of business. They should feel its influence, its prestige, the moment they step inside. This redesign doesn't change your brand, it enhances it." James didn't say anything for a long moment. Anna kept her gaze locked onto his, refusing to show even a hint of uncertainty. Then, without breaking eye contact, he leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on the table. "What makes you so sure this will work?" It wasn't said with doubt. It was a challenge. Anna inhaled slowly, pressing the remote once more to reveal her final slide, a detailed breakdown of research she had conducted on top-tier corporate environments, the psychology of luxury spaces, and how subtle design choices influenced decision-making at a subconscious level. "I studied the environments that truly successful companies create," she said. "The ones that don't just impress their clients, but make them want to stay. This concept isn't just about aesthetics. It's about retention, about creating an environment where people feel compelled to do business with Sinclair Enterprises." The room was silent. Even Jacob Foster, who had been watching with detached amusement earlier, now seemed more focused, his smirk faltering slightly as he studied the data on the screen. Flora, arms still crossed, let out a quiet sigh and glanced at James. "She has a point." That caught Anna off guard. James finally looked away from her to Flora, his expression unreadable. "You agree?" Flora exhaled through her nose, clearly reluctant but unwilling to deny the facts. "I wouldn't have given her the time of day if it were up to me, but this is solid work." Anna held back the urge to smile in victory. She wasn't out of the woods yet, but this was progress. James looked back at her, his gaze measuring, calculating. Then, to her surprise, he nodded. "I want the full specs on my desk by Monday," he said. Anna blinked. "Wait, that meant—" "You're approving it?" she asked cautiously. James tilted his head slightly, his mouth curving into the faintest hint of a smirk. "I'm giving you a chance," he corrected. "Don't waste it." Her pulse thrummed in her ears. James Sinclair, the man who had barely looked at her twice when she walked into this company, was putting his faith in her vision. But before she could fully process what that meant, Jacob leaned back in his chair, his voice smooth and deliberately casual. "Well, this just got interesting," he mused. Anna's spine stiffened. There was something in his tone, something almost too entertained. She turned her gaze toward him, meeting his amused stare. "I have to admit, I didn't think you had it in you," Jacob continued. "Challenging Sinclair like that. But you pulled it off." There was something about the way he said it, like it was all a game to him. Anna didn't respond, refusing to take the bait. But James? He didn't look amused. His sharp gaze flickered toward Jacob, subtle but unmistakably watchful. Jacob smirked. "Let's just hope you don't disappoint him, Miss Montgomery." A cold undercurrent ran beneath his words. Anna didn't know what Jacob Foster's true intentions were. But as she left the room, she had the distinct feeling that this wasn't the last time she'd have to prove herself. And James Sinclair? He was watching her walk away, like he wasn't sure whether to be impressed or to prepare for the storm she was about to bring. The weekend passed in a blur of meticulous planning, sleepless nights, and countless cups of coffee. By Monday morning, Anna had everything she needed: her full specifications, cost breakdowns, material samples, and finalized renderings, all neatly prepared in a sleek portfolio. This wasn't just a proposal anymore. This was her statement. She stepped into Sinclair Enterprises with her head held high, ignoring the nerves curling in her stomach. She had earned her place here, and she wasn't about to let anyone, including James Sinclair himself, shake her confidence. As she made her way toward the executive floor, she felt a familiar presence beside her. "Morning, Montgomery," Ryan Carter's smooth voice drawled. Anna sighed but didn't slow her pace. "Carter." Ryan fell into step beside her, grinning. "So how does it feel knowing you're probably the first person in years to tell James he was wrong and actually get away with it?" Anna smirked. "You make it sound like I survived a battle." Ryan shot her a knowing look. "That's because you did." She chuckled, but the amusement faded as they approached James's office. The massive glass doors stood open, revealing James standing near the window, flipping through a document with his usual air of control. The tension in the room shifted the second she entered. James glanced up, his gaze immediately locking onto her. "Miss Montgomery?" he greeted, voice unreadable. "You're early." Anna lifted her chin. "I like to be prepared." His lips curved ever so slightly. "Good." Ryan whistled low under his breath. "This is going to be fun." He clapped Anna on the shoulder before strolling off, leaving her alone with James. She exhaled and stepped forward, setting the portfolio on his desk. "Everything you asked for. Finalized." James closed the file he had been reviewing and pulled her documents toward him. He didn't open them right away. Instead, he studied her, as if trying to gauge something beneath the surface. "Do you believe in this design?" he asked. Anna blinked at the question. "Of course I do. Every detail has been considered down to the last." "I'm not asking about the details," he interrupted, leaning back in his chair. "I'm asking if you believe in it." Anna held his gaze. This was another test, so she answered the only way she knew how. Yes, she said firmly. I believe this is the best direction for Sinclair Enterprises. It's not just about aesthetics, it's about influence. This space will make an impact. For a moment, James just watched her, the weight of his scrutiny pressing against her resolve. Then, without a word, he flipped open the portfolio and began reviewing her work. Anna held her breath. This was it. The silence stretched as James turned each page with deliberate precision. His expression was unreadable, his fingers tapping lightly against the edge of the portfolio as he absorbed every detail. Anna stood motionless, resisting the urge to fidget. She had poured everything into this design. Her expertise, her instincts, her belief that Sinclair Enterprises needed something more than just another polished, impersonal space. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, James set the portfolio down and leaned back in his chair. His gaze, sharp and assessing, met hers. It's bold. His tone was neutral, but Anna caught the slight edge of something. Intrigue? Approval? She couldn't tell. I don't do safe, she replied evenly. A flicker of something crossed his face, amusement perhaps. But it was gone before she could fully register it. He steepled his fingers. The materials. Why the emphasis on texture contrast? Anna took a measured breath. Because texture subconsciously influences perception. A space should feel as powerful as it looks. The contrast between smooth marble and matte wood, the interplay of soft seating with structured lines, it all subtly communicates balance, control, and authority. It's not just about what people see, it's about what they experience when they enter this space. James studied her for a moment, then exhaled softly. You understand influence. Anna's heart pounded, but she kept her expression neutral. It's what you hired me for. A slow smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. I haven't hired you yet. Before she could respond, a knock sounded at the door. James didn't look away from her as he called out, "Come in." The door swung open, and Jacob Foster strolled in, his smirk as sharp as ever. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important, he drawled. His gaze flicked briefly to Anna before settling on James. I heard you were reviewing the VIP lounge project. Thought I'd drop by and see what's got you so invested. James's jaw tensed slightly. It's under review. Jacob's gaze slid back to Anna. Miss Montgomery, wasn't it? His smile was all teeth. You've certainly managed to make an impression. Anna met his stare head-on. I aim to. Jacob chuckled. Ambitious, I like that. But tell me, how do you handle pressure? His tone was light, almost casual, but there was something calculated in the way he spoke, as if testing her. Anna didn't blink. I don't break, Jacob grinned. We'll see about that. He turned back to James. You know, Sinclair, a lot of people are watching this project. You wouldn't want to gamble on something too unconventional, would you? James's expression remained unreadable. I don't gamble. I calculate risks. Anna's fingers tightened slightly at her sides. She could see what was happening. Jacob was trying to plant doubt, trying to push James into second-guessing his decision. Before she could stop herself, she spoke. Then let me make this easy. She turned to James, her chin lifted. Give me a team. Let me oversee the execution. If I fail, you can scrap the project entirely. But if I succeed, then Sinclair Enterprises gets something truly remarkable. The room was thick with tension. James didn't answer immediately. He simply watched her, measuring, weighing. Then, to her surprise, he nodded once. You have 2 weeks. Anna's pulse roared in her ears, but she refused to let her relief show. Jacob laughed under his breath. Well, this just got interesting. As he left the office, Anna couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about her design anymore. This was about proving herself to James, to Sinclair Enterprises, and now to a man who clearly wanted her to fail. Anna had barely left James's office before the weight of his words settled in. 2 weeks. 2 weeks to take a concept and turn it into a tangible, flawless execution. 2 weeks to prove herself in an environment where failure wasn't just frowned upon, it was weaponized. She had known this wouldn't be easy, but now, with Jacob Foster's thinly veiled challenge lingering in the air, the stakes felt even higher. She spent the next 24 hours assembling a team, diving into blueprints, and securing materials that met Sinclair Enterprises' exacting standards. Some of the in-house designers had been skeptical at first. Who was this outsider making bold decisions on their turf? But Anna didn't have time to win them over gently. She let her work speak for itself, her sharp, no-nonsense direction cutting through doubt. By the second day, things were in motion. Fabric samples, furniture selections, and structural modifications were underway. The lounge was being transformed, piece by piece. But the real challenge wasn't the workload. It was James Sinclair. He had given her control, but he wasn't hands-off. He watched, he observed, he tested. Every suggestion she made, every decision she finalized, it was met with quiet scrutiny. Not overt interference, just presence. A constant reminder that this wasn't just about the project. This was about her. And then there was Jacob. He never openly sabotaged her, never directly opposed her, but his presence loomed over everything. His comments, always wrapped in mocking amusement, were meant to unsettle her. "Are you sure about that choice, Montgomery? Would hate to see all your hard work undone." Or, "I have to admit, I didn't expect you to last this long. But then again, surprises can be temporary." She refused to rise to the bait. Instead, she poured every ounce of her energy into the work, ensuring that every detail was perfect. And yet, despite her efforts, on the 4th day of construction, something went wrong. One of the contractors came rushing toward her, face pale. "We have a problem." Anna's stomach dropped. "What kind of problem?" The contractor exhaled sharply. "Structural issue. The reinforced glass panel we ordered? It was supposed to be load-bearing, but the specs are off. If we install it as is, it could compromise the weight distribution of the ceiling structure." Anna's mind raced. This wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a disaster. The timeline was tight enough as it was. If they had to reorder materials or halt construction, it could set them back days. And in a 2-week deadline, days were deadly. And just like clockwork, she felt a presence behind her. "Jacob." "Well, well," he said smoothly, hands tucked into his pockets. "I did say surprises were temporary." Anna clenched her jaw, forcing herself to stay calm. Losing control in front of Jacob Foster was not an option. She turned to the contractor, keeping her voice even. "What are our alternatives? Can we reinforce the structure without delaying the timeline?" The man hesitated. "We'd have to pivot. A different type of glass. Reinforced steel framing instead of pure load-bearing. It's possible, but expensive. And we'd need immediate approval for the change." Anna didn't blink. "Then we get approval." She spun around and strode toward James's office, ignoring Jacob's low chuckle behind her. He had been waiting for this, waiting for the moment she'd hit an obstacle, hoping she'd stumble. But she wouldn't give him the satisfaction. By the time she reached James's office, she barely stopped to knock before pushing open the door. He was at his desk, reviewing documents, but he didn't look surprised to see her. He looked like he had been expecting her. "Miss Montgomery," he said smoothly, setting his pen down. "To what do I owe this visit?" Anna dropped the modified construction plan in front of him. "We have a problem, and I have a solution, but I need your approval." She didn't wait for him to ask questions. She launched into an efficient, precise breakdown of the issue, the necessary adjustments, the cost differential, and why this was the only viable path forward. James listened without interruption, his sharp gaze locked onto her the entire time. When she finished, he leaned back slightly, considering. "That's a significant adjustment." "It's a necessary one," Anna countered. Silence. Then James picked up the proposal and signed off on it without further discussion. "Make it happen." Anna exhaled, barely able to contain her relief. "Thank you." She turned to leave, but James's voice stopped her. "Montgomery." She glanced back. His expression was unreadable, but there was something there, something bordering on admiration. "You handled this well." Anna nodded once, then left the office, her heart pounding. The moment she stepped back onto the construction floor, Jacob was waiting, leaning against a steel beam with that same infuriating smirk. "So did he bail you out?" Anna arched a brow. "If by bail me out you mean approve my plan because it was solid and necessary, then yes." Jacob let out a low chuckle. "Interesting. Let's see if you can keep up the momentum." Anna held his gaze, unshaken. "I intend to." She turned away, barking orders to the construction crew, her focus razor sharp. The project would move forward, the changes would be made, and she would finish this job flawlessly. But as she worked, she couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't just proving herself professionally anymore. She was proving something to James Sinclair, and he was watching her just as closely as Jacob was. The next few days passed in a blur of relentless work, tight deadlines, and meticulous attention to detail. Anna barely had time to breathe, let alone acknowledge the mounting pressure that weighed on her shoulders. The revised construction plan had been implemented without delay, and the team had adapted seamlessly, thanks in no small part to her leadership. Every decision she made was executed with precision. Every problem that arose was solved before it could escalate. She was in control, and for the first time since stepping into Sinclair Enterprises, she felt like she belonged here. But just as things seemed to be settling into place, James Sinclair decided to shake them up again. She was reviewing material samples in the lounge when she heard his voice behind her. "Walk with me." Anna turned to find him standing there, his gaze steady and unreadable. He didn't phrase it as a request. She hesitated only for a second before setting her work aside and following him out of the lounge, down the sleek hallways of Sinclair Enterprises. They walked in silence for a moment, the air thick with something unspoken. James finally broke it. "Your execution has been impressive. I expected resistance from the team, but they seem to be following your lead." Anna glanced at him. "Because I don't waste time trying to win them over. I show them I know what I'm doing." His lips twitched in the barest hint of amusement. "A practical approach." "It works," she said simply. James led her into a private conference room and gestured for her to sit. She did, waiting as he closed the door behind him and took the seat across from her. The weight of his attention settled on her, measured and calculating. "Tell me what you really think of Sinclair Enterprises," he said. Anna blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me?" You're observant, he continued, and you don't hold back when you believe in something. So tell me, what do you see when you look at this company? Anna studied him carefully. Was this another test? Another way to gauge whether she could be molded into Sinclair Enterprises' rigid structure? She exhaled, choosing honesty. It's powerful, efficient, and undeniably successful, but it's also impersonal. The brand is strong, but it lacks soul. James's brow lifted slightly. Soul? Yes, she said, undeterred. People respect Sinclair Enterprises, but they don't connect with it. There's a difference between commanding a room and making people want to stay in it. Right now, this company does the former. James didn't respond right away. His gaze flickered with something unreadable, something that made Anna wonder if she had said too much. But then he leaned forward, elbows resting on the table. And you think your design changes that? I know it does, she said without hesitation. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The tension between them had shifted, no longer just professional, but something deeper, something charged. Then James nodded once. Finish the lounge. Make sure it proves your point. Anna stood, pulse steady. I will. As she walked out of the room, she knew one thing for certain. James Sinclair wasn't just watching her work. He was watching her. And that, more than anything, made this project feel like it was about more than just a design. It was about power, control, and the slow unraveling of whatever was building between them. The next few days blurred into a whirlwind of work and tension, the lines between professional challenges and personal dynamics growing increasingly blurred. Anna pushed herself harder than ever, ensuring that every detail of the lounge aligned with her vision. There was no room for mistakes, no time for second-guessing. But even as she threw herself into the project, she couldn't ignore the undercurrents of something unspoken between her and James Sinclair. He wasn't just overseeing her work anymore. He was studying her. His presence was felt in every decision, every revised plan, every unexpected meeting where he would challenge her choices, not to dismiss them, but to make her justify them. He was pushing her, testing her, and she knew it. The strangest part was that she didn't hate it. What she did hate, however, was Jacob Foster. He had taken a special interest in this project, though whether it was out of curiosity or sabotage, Anna wasn't sure. What she did know was that he always seemed to appear at the worst times, always with that smug, condescending smile, and an observation meant to unsettle her. You work hard, Montgomery. Almost too hard. You'd think you had something to prove. She ignored him as best she could, but she wasn't naive. Jacob wasn't just lurking. He was waiting. For what, she wasn't certain, but the unease in her gut refused to go away. Her concerns about Jacob, however, had to take a back seat to the real problem at hand. A major delivery was delayed. The custom marble slabs meant for the main lounge area, a centerpiece of her design, had been held up due to a shipping error, and the supplier was now claiming that they wouldn't arrive for another week, possibly longer. That wasn't an inconvenience. That was a catastrophe. Anna stood in the middle of the partially completed lounge, phone pressed against her ear as she listened to the supplier's apologies, barely managing to keep herself from screaming. There was no time for this. She had 2 weeks total, and now half of that time was gone. Ending the call, she inhaled sharply, forcing herself to think logically, not emotionally. Panicking wouldn't fix this. She needed a solution. Her mind raced through alternatives. Could she swap in a different material? No, the entire structural aesthetic relied on the contrast the marble would provide. Could she expedite the delivery? Not unless she found a supplier who could get her exactly what she needed, and fast. A presence at her side made her look up. James. Of course he was here. He studied her, his sharp gaze taking in the tension in her shoulders, the way she gripped her phone like she was ready to break it in half. Problem? Anna exhaled slowly. The marble is delayed, possibly past the deadline. James didn't react immediately. What's the workaround? She hesitated. I could find a local supplier, but it won't be an exact match, and anything subpar would throw off the balance of the entire space. James nodded slightly, as if processing her response, weighing her ability to problem-solve under pressure. What do you need? The directness of the question caught her off guard. What? James met her gaze, his expression unreadable. If this is going to be finished on time, what do you need? Anna wasn't used to being given solutions so easily. She was used to fighting for them, proving she could handle things alone. But standing here in front of James Sinclair, she realized this wasn't about being rescued. It was about efficiency. She didn't let pride get in the way. I need a direct supplier contact, someone who can move fast and isn't limited by standard shipment timelines. James pulled out his phone without hesitation, dialing a number. Anna blinked. What are you? He held up a finger, signaling for her to wait as the call connected. Richard. James Sinclair. His voice was smooth, authoritative. I have a situation with a shipment, marble slabs for an internal project. I need it expedited. No delays. A pause. Yes. Montgomery. Her design. Another pause. Perfect. Send me a timeline update within the hour. He ended the call and looked at her like he hadn't just casually solved the single biggest issue of her project. Anna swallowed. That was fast. James smirked slightly. I don't like inefficiency. Anna should have been relieved, grateful even, but something about the way he said it sent heat curling low in her stomach. She cleared her throat, forcing her mind back to the project. Thank you. He nodded, studying her for another beat before saying, Make sure this is worth the favor I just cashed in. Anna lifted her chin, her confidence returning. It will be. She didn't miss the way James's lips twitched slightly before he turned and walked away. And just like that, the problem was handled. But Anna couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the last time she'd have to navigate the blurred line between challenges and expectations when it came to James Sinclair. And she wasn't sure how much longer she could pretend that line still existed at all. The marble slabs arrived 2 days ahead of schedule, delivered with the kind of precision that only someone with James Sinclair's influence could make happen. Anna barely had time to process the relief before diving headfirst into the final stages of execution. Every element of the design was now falling into place, the space evolving from blueprints and renderings into something real, tangible, powerful. But with progress came tension. Not from the project itself, that was going exactly as she envisioned, but from James. He was everywhere, not hovering, not interfering, but present, watching, testing, challenging her in ways that weren't just professional anymore. And the worst part? She was starting to like it. Like the way he would casually inspect her work, asking sharp questions that forced her to defend her decisions. Like the way his eyes would linger just a second too long when she spoke, as if he was reading between the lines of her words, searching for something she wasn't even sure she wanted to reveal. And then there were the moments that weren't professional at all. Like now. Anna stood in the nearly finished lounge, checking the installation of the custom lighting fixtures when she felt a presence behind her. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Sinclair. She kept her voice neutral, her focus on the placement of the dimmable backlights along the marble feature wall. Montgomery. His tone was equally composed, but she could hear it, that undercurrent of something else. She turned to face him, expecting his usual scrutiny, but instead, he was holding 2 glasses of whiskey. Her brows lifted slightly. Are we drinking on the job now? James smirked, handing her a glass. Consider it a preview. The executives using this space will expect perfection, down to the whiskey selection. Anna studied him for a moment before taking the glass. And you trust my palate for this? I trust your instincts, he said simply. That one sentence did something to her. It wasn't just about the project anymore. James Sinclair trusted her. Anna swallowed, breaking eye contact as she took a slow sip. The whiskey was smooth, rich, expensive, like everything else in his world. She set the glass down and folded her arms. You didn't just come here for a drink. What do you want? James took his time responding. Then, in a voice lower, rougher than usual, he said, I want to know if you understand what you've done here. Anna frowned slightly. What do you mean? James set his own glass down and stepped closer. Too close. You came in here ready to prove yourself, and you have. His gaze locked onto hers, unwavering, unreadable. But you've also changed things. She felt the weight of his words, even if she didn't fully understand what he meant. I just did my job, she said carefully. James shook his head. No, Montgomery. You did more than that. And for the first time since she had met him, James Sinclair looked like a man who wasn't sure what to do about something. Anna's pulse kicked up a notch, but she refused to let it show. She held his gaze, steady and unyielding, even as the air between them thickened with something neither of them wanted to name. James Sinclair wasn't the type of man to say things he didn't mean. His words were calculated, deliberate. And yet, standing here, in this nearly completed lounge, whiskey in hand and tension simmering between them, there was something different in the way he was looking at her. Something she wasn't sure how to handle. She took a slow breath, breaking eye contact first, forcing herself back to neutral ground. If I've changed things, it's because they needed changing. James studied her, then nodded slightly, as if he had expected that answer. And yet, you still don't realize what that means. Anna narrowed her eyes. What does it mean, Sinclair? His lips curved slightly, not quite a smirk, but something close. It means people are watching you. Her stomach tightened. She knew that. She had felt Jacob's scrutiny, the way he lingered around the project, waiting for a crack to form. She had seen Flora's measured glances, as if trying to decide whether to respect her or warn her. And of course, there was James himself, who had been testing her since day one, pushing her to prove herself over and over again. I don't care if people are watching, she said, voice even. I care about the work. James's gaze darkened, something almost dangerous flickering in his eyes. That's why they're watching, Montgomery. Because you care, and that makes you unpredictable. Anna's breath hitched slightly. There it was again, that fine line between challenge and something else, something that sent heat curling low in her stomach. But before she could respond, a voice cut through the charged silence. Well, isn't this cozy? Anna turned just in time to see Jacob Foster stroll into the lounge, his usual smirk firmly in place. James's expression shut down immediately, his presence shifting from something unspoken to something impenetrable. Anna straightened, her irritation flaring. "Something you need, Foster?" Jacob let out a low chuckle, taking his time as he glanced around the lounge, as if appraising her work. "I was just passing through, but now I'm curious. I mean, it's not every day I see Sinclair taking a personal interest in one of his projects. Or his designers." His gaze flicked between them, suggestive and knowing. James's jaw tightened just slightly, but his voice was smooth as ever. "You seem to be taking an unusual interest yourself." Jacob grinned. "Can you blame me? It's fascinating, really. How quickly things can change. How someone can go from an outsider to, well, whatever this is." Anna refused to let him get under her skin. "If you're looking for gossip, you're wasting your time." Jacob chuckled again. "Oh, Montgomery, I never waste my time." He took a step closer, lowering his voice just slightly. "Tell me, does it ever cross your mind how temporary all of this is?" A chill ran down her spine. "Excuse me?" Jacob's smile didn't falter, but there was something cold beneath it now. "Sinclair likes to test people. See how far they can go before they break. It's entertaining, really. But the thing about tests..." He tilted his head slightly. "Not everyone passes." Anna's stomach knotted, but she refused to show it. "And you'd know all about that, wouldn't you?" Jacob's eyes gleamed. "Oh, I do." Silence stretched between them for a beat too long before James spoke. His voice edged with finality. "If you're done wasting my time, Foster, leave." Jacob turned to him, his smirk never fading. "Always a pleasure, Sinclair." His gaze lingered on Anna for a second longer before he turned and walked away, slow and deliberate, like he had already won something. Anna exhaled once he was gone, her pulse thrumming. What the hell was that? James's jaw was still tight, his eyes colder than she had ever seen them. "Jacob likes to play games." Anna frowned. "I don't think he was playing." James's gaze flicked back to her. "No," he admitted. "He wasn't." A beat of silence passed before he exhaled, running a hand over his jaw. "Be careful, Montgomery." Anna straightened. "I can handle Jacob." James held her gaze, something almost unreadable flashing behind his eyes. "That's not what I'm worried about." Anna didn't get the chance to ask what he meant, because at that moment, her phone buzzed with an urgent message. Her stomach dropped as she read the words. "Security issue at the site. You need to come now." Without hesitation, she turned on her heel and strode toward the exit. James followed without a word. Because whatever was happening, it wasn't just about the project anymore. Anna moved fast, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floors as she exited the executive wing, her mind racing. Security issue. That could mean anything, and none of it was good. She barely noticed James falling into step beside her, his long strides matching her pace effortlessly. Neither of them spoke as they rode the elevator down, the tension coiling tighter and tighter with each passing second. When they reached the construction site, the scene was chaos. Several workers stood around in tense clusters, murmuring amongst themselves, while two security guards stood near the back entrance, speaking in hushed tones. Anna's stomach twisted. She forced herself forward, pushing past the murmuring crowd. "What happened?" One of the security guards, a broad-shouldered man with a stiff posture, turned toward her. "Miss Montgomery, there's been an incident. Someone broke into the site late last night. No major damage, but they left a message." Anna's brows furrowed. "A message?" The guard exhaled, nodding toward one of the unfinished walls. You should see for yourself. She moved through the half-completed space, her pulse hammering louder with every step, and then she saw it, spray-painted in bold, jagged letters across the pristine marble wall. Some people don't belong here. A chill ran down her spine. Her hands curled into fists as she stared at the words, anger slowly drowning out the initial shock. This wasn't just random vandalism. This was a warning. She turned sharply to the security guard. "Do we have camera footage?" The man hesitated. That's the thing. Whoever did this knew how to avoid them. No direct footage, just a shadow caught near one of the loading docks. James had been silent up until now, but when he spoke, his voice was low and controlled. Too controlled. "Who else knows about this?" The guard straightened. "Only site security and the lead foreman. We didn't want to cause unnecessary panic." James gave a curt nod, then turned to Anna. "This isn't random." Anna clenched her jaw. No kidding. Her mind whirled. Who would do this? The list wasn't long, but only one name stood out in her mind. Jacob. She had seen the way he watched her, the way he enjoyed pushing boundaries, enjoyed making people uncomfortable. But would he really escalate things this far? James seemed to be thinking the same thing, because he exhaled sharply and muttered, "Foster." Anna turned to him. "We don't have proof." His gaze met hers, sharp and unyielding. "Yet." She swallowed, nodding. "We need to handle this carefully. If this gets out, it'll raise questions about the security of the project." James studied her for a moment, then said, "You're not backing down." Anna's chin lifted. Not a chance. For the first time since they had arrived, something flickered in James's expression, something that looked suspiciously like respect. But before Anna could process it, her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, her stomach sinking at the name flashing across the screen. Flora. And she had a feeling this call wasn't going to be good news. Anna inhaled deeply, forcing herself to stay calm as she swiped to answer the call. "Flora?" There was no preamble. Flora's voice was sharp, clipped. "I need you in my office, now." Anna exchanged a glance with James, who was already watching her closely, then turned away slightly. "Is this about the security issue?" Flora's pause was brief but telling. "Just get up here." The line went dead. Anna exhaled slowly, rolling her shoulders before shoving her phone back into her pocket. "I need to go." James nodded once, but there was an edge to his stance. Something about the way his jaw tightened that told her he wasn't done with this conversation. "I'll handle things here. Keep me updated." Anna hesitated for only a second before turning and striding back toward the elevator. She had no idea what was waiting for her upstairs, but she had a sinking feeling this wasn't going to be a simple meeting. When she reached Flora's office, the door was already open, which was never a good sign. The HR director sat behind her massive glass desk, a stack of papers in front of her, her eyes coldly assessing as Anna stepped inside. "Sit." Anna didn't like taking orders, but she complied, lowering herself into the chair opposite Flora and folding her hands carefully in her lap. "What's going on?" Flora pushed a manila folder across the desk. "Someone filed a formal complaint against you." Anna's stomach dropped. "What?" She forced herself to remain still as she reached for the folder and flipped it open. Her eyes scanned the words inside, her pulse spiking higher and higher with every line. Accusations of misconduct, unprofessional behavior, creating a hostile work environment, allegations that she was using personal relationships to gain favor with upper management. She looked up, shock barely contained. "This is ridiculous." Flora's expression didn't waver. "Is it?" Anna clenched her teeth. "I have no personal relationships with upper management." Flora's brow lifted just slightly. "You sure about that?" Anna stiffened. She knew exactly what Flora was implying. James, the subtle, unspoken tension between them, the fact that he had overruled objections to keep her on this project, the way his attention lingered on her longer than it should. Anna forced her voice to stay calm. "This is a fabrication." "Maybe," Flora said smoothly, "but that doesn't mean it won't create problems." Anna couldn't believe this was happening. "Who filed it?" Flora leaned back slightly, watching her carefully. "Anonymous?" Anna let out a sharp breath. Coward. Her mind whirled through possibilities. This wasn't just about her. This was calculated. Someone wanted her gone, and they were using corporate red tape to do it. Jacob. It had to be him. Flora exhaled through her nose, tapping her nails against the desk. "Look, Montgomery, I don't care who Sinclair takes an interest in. What I do care about is the fact that this," she gestured toward the file, "can spiral, fast, and you don't have the kind of leverage that can survive something like this." Anna's jaw tightened. "So what? I'm supposed to walk away?" Flora studied her for a long moment. "I didn't say that, but I am saying you need to be smart." Anna stared at the complaint again, rage simmering just beneath the surface. This wasn't about misconduct. It was about control. Someone, Jacob most likely, wanted her off this project. She met Flora's gaze head-on. "What happens next?" Flora sighed. "There'll be a review, official meetings, nothing public yet. But if more complaints come in—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Anna refused to let someone scare her out of this. "I want to fight this." Flora exhaled. "Then you better be damn sure you have nothing to hide." Anna's spine stiffened. "I don't." Flora held her gaze for another beat before nodding. "Then let's hope Sinclair sees it the same way." Anna left the office feeling like she'd just stepped onto a battlefield she didn't even know existed. This wasn't just a test anymore. Someone was actively trying to destroy her, and she wasn't about to let them win. Anna left Flora's office with her jaw tight, her heart pounding in a mixture of fury and determination. A formal complaint. Anonymous. She wasn't naive. This wasn't about professionalism or workplace conduct. This was about power, about control, about someone trying to push her out before she could fully stake her claim in Sinclair Enterprises. And she had a very strong suspicion about who was behind it. Jacob Foster had been circling like a shark since day one, watching her, baiting her, waiting for the moment she'd slip. And now, with the project nearing completion and her influence in the company solidifying, he was trying a different tactic. He wasn't confronting her. He was trying to undermine her from the inside. She stalked toward the executive wing, barely seeing the blurred figures of employees moving past her. She didn't stop until she reached James Sinclair's office. His assistant, an older woman with a severe bun, barely had time to glance up before Anna pushed open the door without knocking. James was at his desk, deep in conversation with Ryan, but both men immediately looked up when she entered. Ryan raised a brow. "Well, someone looks like they're ready for war." Anna ignored him, her gaze locked on James. "We need to talk. Now." James studied her for a beat, then nodded to Ryan, who exhaled dramatically and stood. "Fine. I'll leave you two to your whatever this is." He shot James a knowing look before strolling out, shutting the door behind him. The moment they were alone, James leaned back in his chair, expression unreadable. What happened? Anna slammed the complaint file onto his desk. Someone filed this against me. James didn't immediately open it. Instead, his eyes flicked to hers. Who? Anonymous. His jaw tightened, and for the first time since she had met him, she saw something flash in his eyes. Anger. He reached for the file, flipping through it with quick, methodical precision. His fingers stilled on a specific page. Leveraging personal relationships for career advancement. He read aloud, his voice unnervingly calm. He closed the file. They're trying to paint this as favoritism. Anna exhaled sharply. I know, it's a setup. They want me out before I can finish the project. James didn't respond immediately. Instead, he slowly leaned forward, his elbows resting on the desk. Do you know who did this? Her pulse thundered, but she met his gaze head-on. Jacob. James's eyes darkened. Neither of them said anything for a long moment. Then James exhaled, slow and measured. This doesn't go public. Not yet. Anna stiffened. So we just let them think they're winning? His smirk was sharp, dangerous. No, Montgomery. We let them think they're safe. Anna's breath hitched slightly at the shift in his tone, the calculated precision in his words. This wasn't just a response. This was strategy. James wasn't a man who reacted emotionally. He anticipated, dismantled, and eliminated threats before they could fully form. And right now, she was watching his mind work, watching him decide exactly how to play this game. She squared her shoulders. So what's the plan? James tapped a finger against the complaint file, considering. If we challenge this directly, we're playing into their hands. The fact that they filed anonymously means they want to test the waters first. See if this sticks. If I come out in open defense of you, it validates the very thing they're trying to accuse you of. Anna gritted her teeth. She hated the politics of it, the quiet maneuvering. So what? We wait for them to make another move? James's gaze flickered, a trace of something unreadable behind his cool exterior. We control the narrative first. Anna exhaled sharply, arms crossing over her chest. How? James stood, rounding the desk to stand directly in front of her. Too close. His presence, his energy. It was commanding, all-consuming. But she didn't step back. She wouldn't. You finished this project flawlessly, he said, voice low. You leave no room for doubt, no gaps they can exploit. And in the meantime, I find out exactly who orchestrated this. His head tilted slightly, eyes narrowing. And when I do, I make sure they understand that going after you was the worst mistake they've ever made. A shiver ran through her. Not from fear, but from something far more dangerous. He wasn't just defending her. He was making this personal. She swallowed. You're sure it's Jacob? James exhaled through his nose, jaw tight. He's the most obvious choice, but I don't move on assumptions. I'll get proof. Anna clenched her fists, nodding once. Then I do my part. I finish the project. James studied her for a moment longer, then gave a slow, approving nod. Good. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. Montgomery. She looked back. His expression was unreadable, but his voice was softer when he spoke again. Don't let them shake you. Anna's pulse thrummed. She wouldn't. She walked out of his office, determined to see this through, but as she did, she couldn't shake the feeling that things had just shifted between them, and she wasn't sure what that meant. Not yet. Anna threw herself into the final stretch of the project with single-minded focus, refusing to let the complaint, the whispers, or the underlying tension with James distract her. She had one job: to finish this flawlessly and prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that she belonged here. She spent every waking hour on site, overseeing the final installations, double-checking every detail, and making sure there was no margin for error. The marble centerpiece was installed perfectly. The custom lighting was adjusted to enhance the grandeur of the space, and every texture, every color, every design element was precisely executed. By the end of the week, the VIP lounge wasn't just complete. It was breathtaking. But Anna barely had time to revel in that victory before the next problem hit. She was reviewing the final touches when one of the foremen approached her, his expression tight. "Miss Montgomery, we've got an issue." Anna's stomach immediately clenched. "What kind of issue?" The man exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "One of the investors, Harrison Vaughn, just showed up. He's demanding to see Sinclair." Anna frowned. Harrison Vaughn. She knew the name. A high-level investor, someone with major influence in the company. But why was he here? "Where is he?" she asked. The foreman gestured toward the entrance. "Lobby, and he doesn't look happy." Anna didn't hesitate. She grabbed her tablet and strode toward the entrance, her pulse kicking up as she spotted the man in question. Harrison Vaughn was imposing. Mid-50s, sharp suit, the kind of presence that commanded attention. And right now, that presence was bristling with barely concealed irritation. James was already there, his stance calm but firm as he faced Vaughn. Anna stopped a few feet away, waiting, watching. "This is a problem, Sinclair," Vaughn was saying, his voice cool but laced with authority. "The board has concerns, unapproved expenditures, risky hiring choices, and now there's a formal complaint lodged against one of your employees. This isn't the kind of attention Sinclair Enterprises should be attracting." Anna's blood went cold. This wasn't just about her. This was about power, control, influence. Vaughn wasn't here because of a simple HR matter. He was here to pressure James into compliance. And she knew exactly what that meant. The board wanted her gone. Now James's expression didn't waver. "You seem misinformed," he said smoothly. "The complaint is under review, and the VIP lounge project is proceeding exactly as planned. There's nothing here that warrants concern." Vaughn's gaze hardened. "That's not your call to make, Sinclair. If this situation isn't handled, the board will intervene." A calculated threat. Anna's breath caught. Because if James was forced to choose between his position, his company, and keeping her on this project, she already knew what the board expected him to do. Anna's heart pounded, but she refused to look away. She wasn't just a spectator in this fight. She was the target. And James knew it too. His posture remained controlled, his face unreadable, but there was an unmistakable shift in the air around him, a crack in the carefully maintained restraint he always wore. James exhaled slowly, his gaze locked onto Vaughn. "You're overstepping." Vaughn's smirk was sharp, almost amused. "I don't think I am. The board has already discussed this. They see the situation for what it is, a liability." He flicked his gaze toward Anna. "Hiring her was a mistake. Keeping her here is an even bigger one." Rage burned in Anna's chest, but she didn't let it show. She couldn't give them more ammunition. James, however, let out a slow, humorless chuckle. "You think the board controls my decisions?" Vaughn's expression didn't change. "The board controls the company. You may be the CEO, James, but you still answer to them. If they lose faith in your leadership, it won't just be Montgomery out of a job." He stepped closer. "It'll be you." A cold silence followed. Anna's stomach twisted. She could see it. This was more than a power play. Vaughn wanted James cornered, and he was using her as leverage to do it. James didn't speak for a long moment. His gaze locked onto Vaughn's like a silent battle was playing out between them. Then, finally, his lips curved into a dangerous smirk. "You underestimate me, Vaughn. That's your first mistake." He took a step forward, his presence commanding. "You think I don't see what you're doing? You think I don't know exactly who filed that complaint? It's a desperate move, a weak play, and I don't entertain weak men." Vaughn's expression darkened. James tilted his head slightly. "Montgomery stays. The project finishes. And if you or anyone else on the board has a problem with that, you're welcome to try and remove me." He leaned in just slightly. "But you won't, because I don't lose." Anna held her breath. Vaughn's jaw clenched. Then, after a tense beat, he straightened, smoothing out his jacket. "You're making a mistake, Sinclair." James's smirk didn't fade. "Then I guess you'll just have to watch me make it." Without another word, Vaughn turned and walked away, his shoulders stiff, his pace precise. Anna didn't breathe until he disappeared through the exit. She turned to James, pulse still racing. I made a decision." His voice was steady, certain. "You're not leaving, Montgomery." Her breath hitched. "Even if it costs you?" James's gaze met hers, something unreadable, intense, consuming. "It won't." And somehow she believed him. The tension from Vaughn's visit lingered long after he had left, but Anna refused to let it shake her. The only thing that mattered now was finishing what she started. The VIP lounge was scheduled for final review today, and no amount of corporate politics was going to change that. She had spent weeks proving herself, pushing through every challenge thrown at her, and she wasn't about to stumble now. She walked into the lounge early that morning, taking in the space with fresh eyes. It was perfect. The deep textures, the subtle luxury, the carefully placed lighting, it all came together in a way that was powerful yet inviting. This wasn't just another sterile corporate environment. This was a statement. And now, it was time to prove that to everyone else. By midday, the key executives began to arrive, murmuring in quiet appreciation as they moved through the space. Even Flora, who had spent most of this process doubting her, looked around with something almost like approval. But it was James she was waiting for. He walked in, his presence immediately commanding attention. But for once he wasn't watching the room. He was watching her. Anna swallowed hard, standing her ground as he approached. He stopped just a few feet away, his gaze sweeping across the space before locking onto hers. "You did it," he said. It wasn't a question. Anna lifted her chin. "Of course I did." Something flickered in his eyes. A trace of pride. Maybe something more. But before either of them could say anything else, the voice of one of the board members cut through the room. "This is impressive." Anna turned to see the gathered executives nodding, murmuring in agreement. Vaughn wasn't here. A calculated absence, but it didn't matter. The decision was made. The project was a success. James nodded once. "Then we're done here." A wave of relief washed over Anna, but she didn't let herself fully relax just yet. Not until the room emptied. Not until the executives had finished their rounds. Not until it was just her and James, standing in the space they had fought for. He studied her for a long moment before speaking. "You should be proud of this." Anna exhaled. "I am." A pause. Then lower, rougher. "And you're staying." It wasn't a question. It wasn't even a request. It was a statement. Her breath caught. James. He took a step closer. You belong here, Montgomery. Whether the board sees it or not. Whether they like it or not. His voice dropped slightly. And I think you know that. Anna did know that. She had walked into Sinclair Enterprises as an outsider, a nobody. But now, she had built something real here, and she wasn't about to walk away. Anna held James's gaze, the weight of everything they had fought through pressing between them. She should have felt relief, triumph even, but all she could feel was the shift, the silent understanding that this wasn't just about the project anymore. It had never just been about the project. She had come here to prove herself, to show that she was more than just another name in a stack of resumes, more than just a designer trying to climb the ranks. And she had done that. She had fought through every challenge, every whisper of doubt, every power play meant to push her out. But along the way, she had also changed things. She had changed him. James Sinclair, the man who built an empire on control, had let her in, not just into his company, but into his space, into his mind. And that was something neither of them had expected. She exhaled slowly, breaking eye contact first, because she wasn't sure she could handle what she might see if she didn't. I should get back to my office, she murmured, already turning toward the exit. But James's voice stopped her in her tracks. Walk with me. It wasn't a question. Anna hesitated only for a second before nodding, falling into step beside him as he led them through the quiet halls of Sinclair Enterprises. The company felt different now. Or maybe she was the one who had changed. James didn't speak until they reached his office. He opened the door, gesturing for her to enter first. She did, swallowing the sudden wave of anticipation curling in her stomach as he closed the door behind them. When he finally turned to face her, his expression was unreadable. Do you know why I hired you? Anna blinked, caught off guard by the sudden question. Because I walked into your car by accident? His lips twitched slightly, but he didn't smile. Because you didn't flinch. Her brows furrowed. What? James stepped closer, his presence almost overwhelming in the quiet space. When you sat in that conference room, being questioned, doubted, challenged, you didn't flinch. You held your ground. You fought for your ideas. You didn't let anyone tell you who you should be or how far you could go. His voice dropped slightly. That's the kind of person I respect. Anna's breath hitched, because this wasn't just about business anymore. She could feel it, the electricity between them, the pull that had been there since the beginning, but had only grown stronger with every battle they had fought. James tilted his head slightly, watching her. And now that the project is done, you have a choice. She swallowed hard, pulse racing. What kind of choice? His gaze didn't waver. Stay. Build something bigger. With me. Anna's breath stalled. He wasn't just talking about the company. She knew it. He knew it. And suddenly everything felt so much clearer. She had spent so long proving that she belonged. But this wasn't about belonging anymore. This was about choosing herself, choosing what she wanted. She took a slow step forward, meeting his gaze head-on. I'm not someone who follows blindly, James. His smirk was slow, almost dangerous. I'd be disappointed if you were. The space between them disappeared in an instant. It wasn't careful. It wasn't soft. It was inevitable. The moment their lips met, it was like every unsaid word, every unspoken challenge between them exploded into something real, something undeniable. James's hands found her waist, pulling her closer, and she let herself fall into the kiss, into the certainty of it. When they finally broke apart, his forehead rested against hers, his breath warm against her skin. "You're staying," he murmured, more of a declaration than a question. Anna smiled, fingers gripping the fabric of his suit lightly. "Yeah," she whispered. "I think I am." And with that, she chose him. She chose this. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to.